Hi, gay is not sin, and Jesus is not asking the gay person to change and be straight. That's right, people. No place in the Bible condemns gays. And I often say, or way back when I first started the ministry here, started on TV, God showed me that basically, generally, the whole United States at least, would have what's equivalent to gay marriage. Not exactly the words that God had revealed to me, but it's basically, back then, it was hard to imagine such a thing as being gay marriage in all of the states, since it was 0% approval. But then it did happen. The whole United States now has gay marriage. Praise the Lord. But some of you still think that gay is sin, and you just don't seem to want to explain why you think it. You can't just say it's in the Bible or something like that. You actually have to explain what verse, and in that verse, what is the grammar and the Greek or Hebrew that defines the gay people. Now all the verses, about 14 of them, and they are defining something like male temple prostitutes, but I can't find where it's defining gay people. So could you tell me, those of you that are listening in on here that really think that it's sin, can you walk me through the verse word by word and tell me what is the way that you got it to describe gay people? Do you know who gay people are? If you look at yourself and look at your average heterosexual marriage, you ought to be able to understand who gay people are, because they're just like you. The way they grow up, the way they want to meet people, and fall in love, and then get married, live together. Just like you. That's who gay people are. So when you're in the Bible and you're trying to look for gays condemned, you have to find gay people. You can't look at some fertility temple and some of their sacred prostitutes, their male sacred prostitutes that you give money to, and some of the money will go to the fertility temple. Others will, some of it will go so that the prostitute can make a living. But the Bible's, those words are distinct, and they describe themselves, and the Hebrew and the Greek and the ancient customs also describes prostitution, fertility prostitution, not gay people in love. So it would be, I know it's useless for me to stand here, because I've been doing this for since 1985, and quite a number of times I've asked you, tell me how you get gays into the Bible to be condemned. Because that's what you do, and you don't seem to even care to explain. It's almost like, well, you're a Christian, and that automatically is your faith, so it's a Christian faith. Believe gay is sin. It's not the Christian faith to believe gay is sin. It's your bigotry. I don't know what necessarily to call it, because if you study, if you look up the Hebrews and Greek words and the customs and the way the grammar was used in those sentences in the Bible, you're not going to find gay people. So what is your problem that when I ask you to tell me where in the Bible does it say gay is sin? Because you're not telling me any place in the Bible. When some of you do tell me, you quote a verse, like you say Romans chapter 1. And then you go down to verse 24, 25, 26. And you try to tell me, you want me to read it or something, as though when I read it, I will all of a sudden be enlightened to understand that you're right. But you know something? I'm gay. And so when I read those verses and it's describing behaviorisms, like it does in Romans chapter 1, 18 through 32, that's not describing my lifestyle. There's 700 million gays. It's not describing their lifestyle. So how is it that I'm supposed to read Romans chapter 1 and somehow see what you see? Because when you look at a gay person, what you see is apparently the sluttiest people on earth. Don't you know the real, as it were, sluttiest people on earth? The kings and queens of sexual immorality has always been and will always be straight people. The Bible pages, you can't hardly get by a page without it talking about some sort of sexual immorality that heterosexuals do. And how come you want to try to put that onto gays? Because you're the king and queens of sexual immorality. Of course, a lot of you aren't, because, you know, this is a pretty big world, and you can say, well, you know, there's, what is it, Joe Namath or something, maybe, I think that's what it was, had 2,000 sexual partners. So does that mean that all heterosexuals have 2,000 sexual partners? Or does it mean he had it, and maybe some others had it? There's a basketball player, too. And but tell me, how do you get Romans chapter 1 to talk about gays? Do you know that Paul lived in Corinth for a period of time, and he wrote the book of Romans there? Have you gone to Corinth? Have you gone to ancient Corinth? Do you know what's at the center of those ruins? Big temple of Apollo. And then all around it is the ruins that they've uncovered. Then you can look up in the mountain. That's you can't miss it, about three or 4 kilometers away, and you get to see this big, steep, tall mountain, kind of like what I just came to. I was kind of wondering if I was ever going to be able to hike that up. I'm not getting any younger, although there's a lot of older people than me going up there, hiking up this trail. So anyway, Paul lived there, and I actually went there, and I went to, you know, it's kind of, you know, just praise the Lord. I didn't know what I was doing, how to get there, and what these trains and subways and all these kind of stuff and buses. How do you get anywhere, and how do you figure out the German language and try to get on there? But somehow, you know, first try, and I got to Corinth, and took a taxi over to ancient Corinth. You know, Corinth back in Paul's day was 400,000 people. It was a huge seaport. So people came in, men came in from all over the known world, basically. And what do men do? What do sailors do when they come into a foreign land? They head down to the prostitutes. Even today, you know, I was in the Air Force for a few years and going overseas and so forth. What do you think that the military people did? And do you look at, say, well, not all of them, just a few? No. In the dorm, it was actually hooch, they called it. It's like screens with a tarp over it. And everybody in there talked about their shenanigans downtown with prostitutes and shacking up and so forth. It wasn't just a casual few or something like that. Men just seems to go to the hookers no matter where they are. They get on a boat and they get gone someplace, or they're shipped someplace overseas, and what do? You're out there finding something. Doesn't matter if you got a wife or fiancé back home. So tell me, who is the ones that are sexual immoral? And why don't you figure out that when you're pointing to the gay person, that you got 3 fingers pointing back at you, at least 3 times more sexually immoral. And just because maybe you're not doing those things, well, do you remember back when you were in school and you weren't married? Were you one of these flukes? You know, some people get out there and say, well, I met my wife in junior high and I didn't see anybody else. She's the first one. We got married as soon as out of high school, and here we are still together 50 years later. And this kind of a person is going to be an example to the average human being? They're not. But however, the rest of the human race are going out and having all their flings whatsoever. And it's even worse today than it was back then, because now today anybody can find anything at a click of a button. And so again, gay is not sin. And Jesus is not asking the gay person to change. So why are you? Some of you, now a lot of you aren't these days. You're coming along pretty good, and realizing you don't need to condemn everybody, and realize that Jesus says, you know, to love your neighbor as yourself, and so you're out doing that very thing, and so get over here out of the wind maybe. So you need to, you know, keep doing that kind of thing. And those of you that want to point a finger at everything, want to find, you know, there's some people who get out there and they get this idea, you know, well, let's condemn the president or something. Why? Don't you know that in this day and age, you should have done enough studying now to figure out that it doesn't matter who's in the government. The design is whether it's them personally or their bosses, unseen bosses. We think that the president is running the country, then or anybody is basically, they're not running anything basically. They can do only as much as what they are basically told to do. You see, this kingdom that's coming, this Antichrist kingdom, this tribulation period of 7 years that's coming, requires the adherence of all the governments of the world. Now, yeah, there's going to be a couple of countries that are going to opt out of Antichrist kingdom, according to the Bible. It looks like Jordan is, and possibly even after all said and done, you know, as much as the United States is putting all of their efforts into it, they just might opt out at the last minute. But it's kind of hard when we see the things going on in the government getting us ready. I mean, it's just like if we go by a few days not thinking about anything, and then we click on the new event things and see what's happening, because we don't see it walking around the house and out and doing yard work and whatever, and we go into our computer and see what's going on in the world, we start finding out that, you know, it just keeps getting worse. What they're going to do and what they're planning to do is not going to be fun at all. The banks are going to be taken over. The money you put in there is not going to be your money. It's their money. And so you don't have any hold to it. That's this is what they're going to, and a lot of places in other countries and stuff has already done this. And for the time being, you can pretty much act like it's your money. But it's not what they got set, and it's in stone. It's not going to go away. Same with we got these what we call FEMA camps all over the place. They're not there for looks or posterity or something like that. They're there to be operational. They got mass empty graves where they dug these huge grave sites and made these huge brick containers that can hold hundreds and hundreds of dead bodies easy, and they got lids for them. Right now they're scattered all over the United States, and the lids are on them, they're empty, and several inches of soil is on top of them. And when the time comes, they can scrape that soil off, lift that lid off, start dumping bodies in there. They got these plastic coffins. You could put millions of coffins on your YouTube or image search, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Mass empty graves, you'll see what I'm talking about. And of course, the FEMA camps have been around forever, but now they're getting more and more high tech, and they're doing things to use it. We got something going on called Jade Helm, and some of the stuff we're seeing being practiced, but they're looking like maybe they're ordinary police or something. But there's sure a lot of them. Boy, that's kind of, after one person and they have that many sometimes. But we're seeing a lot of stuff going on, and just look up Jade Helm. You could learn something that is. It's just a training. It's the most massive training involving many other countries, and they're doing this training in the United States, and they're covering a lot of the states. It's mostly the Southwest states, but they're covering an awful lot of states, and unfortunately it sounds like it may not actually be training other than being there in position ready to go, because they got things that doesn't belong in training, like they got things, morgues and stuff that nobody's going to be dying, and they don't need to be all so really set up like that, but they are. And so we're still living in the days that it could go on for a time. Sometimes you look at it and say it could happen anytime. Well, when I got saved, 1974, somebody that was sort of prophesizing was coming around person to person, and like they were with their eyes closed, but they seemed to know everybody they came to, and got to me. They said, I might come in 1974. Well, might doesn't mean he will come in 1974, and obviously he didn't come. And then we get this idea, well, the year 2000 is pretty important, and so but because it's 2,000 years since Jesus was born. Of course, now it's 2015 years. But
is that a bird?
what?
Is that a bird going?
I don't know. I'm doing the program here. That's okay.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no problem. It looks like some people were bird watching, thought I was maybe pointing my camera out here at a bird or something, but I'm not. Anyway, so it's really getting to understand, is it as ready as possible? Sometimes you look at it, looks like it's really ready. How could it get even more ready? But there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be done that isn't done. And then we come into the wonder, it should have been so done. Why isn't Jesus here? Well, did we get this all wrong? Well, maybe it's 2,000 years from when Jesus died. That's the more accurate way of defining things, like, is it Hosea or something like that, Joel, something back in there. It says there'll be 2,000 years, and that third year we'll reign with him. Well, but that's after he dies and after he rose from the dead. Then you start it. So that's 32 or 33. So if we're looking for 2,000 years, we're got to be looking at 2033. So to try to get Jesus to return according to those Old Testament books, we still got another 15 years or so. And that still fits well, because people that were born in 1948, there'll be quite a few of them still alive in another 15, 16, 17 years. So if you go by, that generation won't pass away. So we then Um, you have a lot of different things to try to figure when Jesus comes. It seems like, wow, I thought that, we're having the blood moons and Sabbath Jubilee year and Sabbathal year all this year, and somebody thinks there's going to be a 2.5 mile wide asteroid come here. Well, there's probably going to be a little bit more to it than that. Nobody seems to be able to predict anything, and it happens. The days come and go. So we still got maybe another decade and a half before Jesus returns. So what's going to take place during that time? It can get pretty bad this year. And why does it need to get bad? Some Christians think that, or most Christians think they're not going to go through any of the tribulation. However, the tribulation is designed to get you ready to get into your wedding gown. When you are raptured, you're in your regular clothes, and people like to show your clothes fell off. So what are you doing? Going up naked? That's what they'd have you be, and nobody seemed to explain that. You get your white robes. No, what do you actually get when your clothes are laying there? They always depict it as though you go out of your body is raptured, but the clothes are laying back on the ground or something. Of course, sometimes they show you in your clothes, but basically they're thinking your body's going to go, your clothes isn't going to go. So what are you going to do? Well, you're not going to stay there naked. You're going to slip right in. You slip out of your clothes here as you're going up, and you're slipping into your wedding gown. Jesus has waited long enough, and so when the rapture takes place, you're going to be getting married right away. You're going to get your reward. We're going to meet the dead that rose first, because when they go through Death's Gate, they got their little fix-up, which made them able to put their wedding gown on. But we which are alive, we need a lot of shaking. And that's what the first part of the tribulation's for. And once that time is up, 1,260 days or so, they could be up to 75 days more, then we will then slip out of our clothes and slip into the wedding gown as we're being plucked off earth, meet the dead that rose first, get our crown, and then we'll get married, and then go to the marriage supper of the Lamb. It's going to be really quick work. Jesus doesn't want to wait any longer. He loves us so much. He's waited all this time. He wants to hurry up, get married to you. And that's coming up. But you need to be ready. 1,260 days of shaking. You got to make it through that. If you don't know Jesus right now, turn and say, Jesus, I believe you're the Son of God, and that God rose you on the third day. A simple prayer gets you saved. Now ask Jesus to baptize you in the Holy Spirit. Read Acts chapter 2, and read the King James Version. Get to know Jesus. You got a place of pain, any place on your body right now? Touch that place right now. Got your hand there? In the name of Jesus, be healed. Now tune again. I'm on several times a week. You can go to seattlecommunitymedia.org and watch my programs 24/7.